guys, so this video basically is going to be why I chose to return this drone. So today I'm going to send this FPV drone back to DJI along with the battery combo and a couple other little things that I got, but I want to let you know why I'm doing this. And it's not that I'm hating on this drone. This drone is really beautifully designed. It's a super cool drone to fly. It's really impressive. It turns heads. It's, you know, alien-like, which is really, really cool just because it's just a cool thing. I would love to just have the money to be able to have this on my mantle and just kind of sitting there. But, you know, I don't need a $2,000 brick right now or a little design element because I just can't justify that. But this thing is definitely a cool drone, not hating on it, as I said, but at the same time, it's just not what I really want from a drone flying experience. Every drone that I got essentially was because I wanted to get in the air and fly slowly and fly cinematically and get really beautiful footage. And this thing kind of is the opposite, because in FPV, obviously you want to be flying fast, you want to be flying low, aggressively. It's definitely more of a sport kind of trick drone. And I just am not at that level. So I'm not an FPV guy. I have this thing, which I bought. So I got the remote, the first FPV one, I believe, that DJI made, and I've been using this with the liftoff simulator. And I probably have 11 hours on the sim, but I'm hardly an experienced FPV pilot, obviously. I haven't even flown this in manual mode yet. I kind of want to because I feel I can actually fly it. And again, worst case scenario, the safety features on this, you can just simply toggle out of the manual mode into sport or normal, and it will save your drone and get you back into GPS and lock into place. So there is that, but again, I'm just not at that level, and I don't necessarily want to spend the time and energy putting into flying FPV well, because really, if someone's going to hire an FPV guy, it's not going to be me. I mean, that's just the way it is. Any footage that I get, it's going to be with my Mavic 2 Pro, my Mavic 2 Zoom, my Minis, you know, Mini 2, whatever, my Mavic Air 2, Phantom 4 Pro. If anything, I feel I should take the $2,000 that I put into this guy and put it towards an Inspire 2, because that, to me, is what would excite me way more than flying this thing fast, because really, it's just kind of a toy for me. It's not really equating to a tool, because I can't see how I'm going to incorporate this into my workflow for cinematic footage and flying unless I get really good. And in order to get really good, I got to put in that kind of time and energy, and I simply am not that into it. And when you go out and fly, and I've flown, you know, as I said, a handful of times, I mean, over the past 5 days, you have to essentially not just take out your remote and your phone or your smart controller, you got to take out your goggles, you got to make sure you have the battery pack charged, you got to plug this guy into your battery pack, turn this guy on, wear the goggles, which is really kind of new to me. And there's such a disconnect with the goggles for me personally, not physically being able to see the drone. I just know it's going to take a long time for me to actually fly confidently with the goggles. And these things kind of make me nauseous, honestly. I was flying yesterday during sunset, and while I was standing up flying, I honestly had to lean against my car and kind of compose myself. I mean, when you're kind of cruising around barns and doing maneuvers like that, you really do get nauseated, at least I do. And that's a whole other thing that I just don't really want to associate with drone flying and what I do with my drone experience. So there's that. I mean, again, you got to bring this out. You got to have this thing hanging from you. You got to have this plugged into your phone. And then you have to turn on your remote. You got to power up your drone. The batteries last about 12 minutes for the most part. And that's kind of it. So you got to have these things on. You got to make sure they don't hit, you know, the sun and get damaged, but whatever. There's just a lot more to it, in my opinion. All right, guys. So I want to show you what you'd have to actually bring with this FPV thing when you're actually in the field flying. So if I pull over like I did just now, I want to fly. There's a steeple over here. It doesn't look too hard, but it looks like I can get maybe some cool footage. And I have obviously my drone. So you got the drone with you. And then you have to have the remote. So remote, antenna up, power on. That's powered on. And then we have to have the battery pack for the goggles charged, of course. We have the goggles. We want to make sure that this side does not hit the sun or direct sunlight because it will damage them. we have to have this little adapter cable, which is the USB to Lightning. That's going to go into our iPhone. And then we have to have the latest edition of the Fly app. And we essentially put these on, put this in our pocket. I got 2 additional batteries with me, but this is kind of what you need to do. So you got to take off your glasses, put this headset on. You got this on. You power this guy on by double pressing. And it powers on the goggles. You got the DJI screen. You have this plugged in. Again, you have to have your remote powered on as well. So you got all this stuff right here. So it's not as easy as just pulling out a drone and your phone and the controller or a smart controller, as I said. So I just want you guys to understand that this is what's going to be involved while you're on location. If you do see a spot that you want to fly, it's going to be a little bit more intensive with the FPV thing than it is with just the normal drone you may be used to. This is essentially what you are going to look like when you're flying your drone. So you got to get used to looking like this. You're that guy now, and there's that. So you put your goggles up, of course, for certain things like takeoff. That's what I do at least. And then put them back down, and I kind of visually do that on and off because, again, I'm getting used to this whole FPV thing. The goggles are a little bit foreign to me, so I got to trust myself with the goggles on and my flying ability. I just wanted to give you that little insight so you guys are aware. And it's just not something that I really want to get into. I mean, it really honestly doesn't appeal to me. What appeals to me is flying slowly and more cinematically in the air and whatever. I mean, people can hate on me for that or say something like you just don't get it, but maybe I don't want to get it. I don't really want to take that kind of energy and put it into flying this FPV drone. I mean, I'd rather actually learn on the sim and get better with that and then buy something maybe a little bit smaller, lighter, like one of those Sin Whoops or something like that, and start that way. This thing, if you crash and clip something, you're going to definitely do some damage. I guarantee you're going to break an arm. You're going to do something where it's going to probably be at least $300-400 every time you crash. And for me, that's way more than just obviously swapping out some props if you crash and damage them. I mean, again, this thing is a very cool drone. I haven't taken it out of normal or sport mode, but I just know that it's going to take a lot of time and energy. And I care for my mom who has dementia, and I have animals, and I have a job, and I do other stuff with the real estate photography and my other drone stuff. And I just feel that this is going to take away from me flying my other drones too. So there's that. I mean, I just know myself personally, I'm going to want to fly this thing until I get good at it. And that's going to kind of draw and pull at me the entire time while I have these other 4 or 5 drones sitting here in cases not doing anything. So I could be accumulating footage and having more experience flying smoothly and cinematically and working on incorporating more movements into my shots. But instead, I'm going to be farting around with the FPV drone, maybe not even getting much. So basically, what it's going to take to actually get footage that I'm going to be happy with is going to require a ton of energy and time, and I just don't want to do that. So there's that. I mean, that's basically the bottom line. It's not something that I am drawn to. Footage-wise, it kind of makes me nauseated. The footage that I see, honestly, I've never really loved FPV footage. Yeah, I'm impressed by the skills of the pilots, and of course, it's really cool to see someone dive bombing and doing loops and cruising canyons. That's awesome, but I just enjoy more cinematic, slower flying. That's just me and a personal taste, so that's that. I mean, I can't deny it. It's just what I actually am more attracted to. And one of the main reasons that I'm returning this drone, so you guys are aware, is this DJI refresh issue. So when I bought this drone in Hawaii, I kind of touched on it in a little video I threw out there so people would be aware. I went through the checkout process and I opted to not get the refresh plan. And you had 2 options when you're checking out with this drone. You have the 2-year refresh plan for $319, and that basically is 3 replacements. So I opted to not do that, and they also had a 1-year plan, which is 2 replacements for $199. I was basically going to get the refresh when I activated this drone, and when I actually got the drone and was activating it, I realized that that $319 2-year option was no longer an option. So I called DJI, or I messaged them in the chat on the store, and they basically told me that that option for the 2-year 3 replacement refresh is only available when you're checking out with the drone in the cart. So you guys are aware that if you are in the market of buying this drone and you do want refresh and you do want 3 replacements, which I would definitely advise because it's an FPV drone and you're going to crash this thing. It's a matter of time. Definitely go ahead and get that 2-year for $319 while you're checking out, because again, that's not going to be an option to you after the fact. So that kind of is one of the main reasons I'm going to return this thing. Maybe I will buy it in the near future with the right refresh plan that I intended on buying initially, but that's a big part of it. But again, that's not it. I just know that it's going to take a lot of time and energy to learn to fly this thing well, and I simply just don't want to put that into it right at this moment of my life, essentially. And I really do think that this drone is going to kind of take away from me wanting to fly my other drones. Again, got 4 or 5 other drones sitting around that I can get really killer footage and that I have money obviously invested in, and I'm going to be sitting here trying to fly this thing well and getting what kind of footage, I don't know. I mean, it really is just kind of footage that I'm not really that into. I don't want to fly low and fast. The whole reason I got into drones was to fly high or fly higher and fly slower and just kind of cruise around and get different compositions. So this thing too, in the winds, definitely is not stable. The camera and the footage has not been amazing in my opinion. It hasn't been bad, but again, I'm not getting anything epic with it because I'm not flying anywhere really amazing and I'm not that great of a pilot. So there's that, but I still can tell how the footage is, and the footage looks pretty darn average to me as far as the quality of it. I didn't shoot in Cinelike, I only shot in the normal color space, so there is that. I'm sure you can pull a little bit more out of the Cinelike. But again, just seems like all the footage I'm getting is wobbly, and I know that because I'm not flying the way maybe you should be, but it's just not something I'm gravitating to, and I'm listening to my gut intuition, and I'm going to return this before I actually crash it, which I know is a huge possibility, and get my money back and then decide. And again, just having all this stuff to lug around, and basically you get a half hour of flying with these 3 batteries, it's just not something that I really want to do. And again, the whole reason I bought this drone was to ideally incorporate the footage from an FPV kind of faster moving drone into my cinematic edits and workflow, but I just know it's going to take way too much time and energy to actually get footage that I'm content with, and I don't want to do that right now. I thought this was going to be more of a tool for me in my actual workflow, and I'm finding out that it really is just more of a toy. It's a really badass toy. It's an expensive toy for the most part, but it's something that I'm not going to actually benefit from that much, at least in this moment, because I'm not that good of a pilot yet. So I'm hoping this helps. Again, there's no hating on this thing. This thing is a really cool drone. It's a beautiful drone. It feels good. The design element of this drone is awesome, but it's just not for me at this point. I'm going to sit and wait and decide later on if I do want to go ahead and buy it. At least I have a little understanding of what it's about, and maybe when I see other people capturing footage, seeing what they're doing with theirs, maybe I'll be more inclined to go ahead and pull the trigger one more time. But again, it's going to go back to DJI today along with the battery combo, and that's about it. So hope this helps, guys. If you're in the market for an FPV DJI drone, just know that there's a lot to learn. It's a steep learning curve. Yeah, you can jump in and fly in normal and sport mode, but in order to get good footage that you're going to be really happy with and stoking people out, it's going to take a long time, let alone to fly in manual mode. So just be aware of that. It's not a, it's a 1-axis gimbal. It's not a 3-axis gimbal. The footage a lot of times is very wobbly. So it's not like you're just going to kind of cruise along and get really beautiful footage. The thing really does wobble, especially in windy environments. There's 15, 20 mile an hour winds today, and I flew it, and it just flew horribly, honestly. It looks like the drone is drunk, or I'm just getting really crappy mini footage. So, keep that in mind. I mean, again, you're flying this cool little drone, but it's still kind of subpar unless you're doing some really cool flying. Otherwise, I believe the Mini 2 would totally smoke it in regards to video quality. So that's it, guys. Aloha. Subscribe if this helps you. And just a little quick video before it goes back into the box and into DJI's service. Bye.